How does travel actually help you expand your business, come up with new ideas, and expand your capacity for growth? This season is all about our travel as founders and CEOs and the many live events we have coming up for you to attend so you can join us. So let's get started.
Welcome to the Grow Your Business for Good show. This is a place where coaches and consultants gather so you can learn how to lead a world-class business that does not tax your time, your energy, or your financial resources. We are your hosts, Shannon Hernandez
and Amy Hager of the Joyful Business Revolution. And our number one goal is to bring you clarity and insight on how to grow your business for good. Well, both Shannon and I just returned from two very different European adventures, and we can't wait to share our stories with you. And I think also we haven't even shared our stories with each other. And so this is a great way for us to catch up with each other too. And so my European adventure actually all started from a invite of a friend of a friend of a friend who had a table at opening weekend at Oktoberfest in Munich. And it's a family table. So if any of you have been to Oktoberfest, you know how hard it is to get in on the upstairs level at a family table opening weekend. So I had to say yes. And to be honest, Munich was never even on my bucket list. Oktoberfest wasn't on my bucket list. I can't drink beer. And there's a lot of the food in Germany that I can't eat either. And so I went, took a risk, and had a blast at Oktoberfest. It was so interesting, all the people coming together. You know, there were hundreds and hundreds of people, and everybody just was happy and dancing, and the costumes were super fun. And so, well, not costumes, I guess the traditional style dress was super fun. And so that was the kickoff of my European trip. And then we took a train over to Salzburg, Austria. If any of you are Sound of Music fans, I got to take the Sound of Music tour, and it was very cool to see the outside of all of these buildings that you see in the movie. But then to find out, like, this was the heartbreaking thing. The inside of every scene of the movie, like any inside shots, were all done in Hollywood. They are fake inside buildings. And I was like, they're not really in the palace shooting at the stairs when they're singing goodbye. I was so sad. Well, that was shot in Germany. It wasn't even shot in Salzburg. So that opening scene is actually over the border. So being able to go on that tour was super duper fun. As someone who's been a big fan of Sound of Music and musical her whole life, that just kind of fulfilled my little heart. My husband actually, sadly, has never seen the movie. So I feel like we're going to correct that this year. And then we took another train to Zurich, and that train was a 5-hour train ride, and it was so beautiful going through the mountains and getting into Zurich. And thanks to one of our fellow joy-filled business collaborators, Nina, she suggested this really cool spa that was an old brewery. And we did a Roman Irish spa routine. And it starts off by going through a sauna, doing a rinse. You've got another sauna. You go into this warmer water. Then you lay on a hot stone. The hot stone was my favorite part.
This is why I tell you, Amy, I practice lizard mode on every freaking hot piece of concrete I can find.
Yes. So now I'm a fan of lizard mode, and I think I understand it better. But here's where it got crazy. And I was like, well, so then you go into another pool. It's like 5 degrees colder than the pool you were just in. And then you go into another pool that's like another 8 degrees. And so that water to me is absolutely freezing. And they say you're supposed to like move and like walk and swim laps in that water. And if any of you all know me, I love 90-degree water. So I didn't spend too much time in that last one. And then you get back on that hot stone. So, and then we just walked around and we ate our way through Zurich. Usually I try to do a food tour when I go to different cities, but we couldn't find one that we really liked. And we also were there competing against like some big bike race that we didn't realize that was happening. And so, yeah, so it was so much fun. It was the first time I've ever taken the trains in Europe. I was very nervous taking the trains in Europe, but we did it just fine. And, you know, I think Shannon walked most of her trip, I feel like I walked as well, but one, not as many miles, and two, in a completely different environment. I'm walking through cities and towns and whatnot, where, you know, Shannon's out there hiking, real life hiking. So very, very fun. And I think it was very sporadic. And we just kind of went where it was easy to travel to. And we didn't really necessarily have an agenda every single place we went, but there was at least one thing that I wanted to do in every city that we visited.
I love that. Well, if y'all think Amy's adventure sounds dreamy, here's what my European adventure was like. I hiked 100 miles across Spain on foot on the Camino de Santiago. I got sick. You might still hear it in my voice. There was one day I couldn't hike. I actually laid in bed all day, and it just happened to be the one sunny day. All the other days it decided to rain and wind, and there was a point where we were walking through a field and the wind was whipping, the ponchos were blowing, the umbrellas were inside out. I was coughing, and the cows were running for shelter. And I remember sitting there thinking, I can't even go to shelter. I still have like 5 miles, and all I want to do is get to the inn and find the bus and get non-wet clothes on. So I also had a beautiful European adventure. It had its ups, it had its downs. And if anyone has ever hiked the Camino, you will now know we call each other pilgrims. And I say Buen Camino. I hope your Camino at home is going just as well as your Camino out through Spain, Portugal, France, wherever you took your Camino journey. So we had a beautiful experience. And Amy's right, we haven't caught up. Today's my first day back to work. So what we thought we'd do today, it'd be really fun, is we want to really highlight 5 ways that travel helps you grow as a business owner, helps us grow as a business owner. And we thought we would talk you through like our reasoning of why we prioritize travel here at Joyful Business Revolution so much for ourselves, but also for our clients and like getting people to our events. And as we go through these 5 points, we're each going to share a story from our travels that will highlight like what that point means to us at this time. All right. So Amy, are you ready? This is going to be pretty fun because we haven't caught up yet.
Yes.
Awesome.
Let's go.
So I also want to say this, and I know this is a pretty bold claim, but it is true for me, and we'd love to know if it's also true for you. Travel doesn't only help me be a better CEO and founder for this company, but it helps me be more inclusive and a more tolerant human being who really wants to bring this mindset and skill set to business owners in our business growth programs and events. So travel is transformative. And that is a slogan used by everyone, which now means nothing. So don't take it and run with it and think it's great messaging. But for now, I just want to say, we're going to dive in and kind of talk about our experiences. So the very first thing that I really think and what is true for me is that travel boosts my confidence as well as my curiosity. And if anyone here has listened to any of our podcasts, been to any of our trainings, we often say, if we can approach our messaging and our marketing through this lens of curiosity and that everything's just an experiment, it takes a lot of pressure off of getting it right. And if the experiment, quote unquote, fails or quote unquote succeeds, it's all just data, right? And so I believe travel does this for me as well. It's a curious experiment. It helps me, it puts me in a different place, in a different time, different food, different people, different language. And I get the opportunity to really stretch myself. And I'd say one of the best ways this showed up in the Camino de Santiago was you really are taught to travel light, right? Like we had a backpack, we traveled light. So I had to get really curious before I left town of what am I actually going to need out here? Like I literally took one pair of earrings. Those of you know I love earrings. That's crazy. I didn't take any jewelry. I took 2 pairs of hiking pants, 2 hiking shorts, an umbrella, thank God, and a raincoat, and
Mm.
lots of underwear and socks because I didn't want wet underwear or socks. It's like the worst, right? And two
Yeah.
pairs of shoes. And so one of the things I actually learned while hiking 100 miles across Spain is, y'all, we don't really need that much in life. Like,
Yeah.
we have so much more than we need and so much more than we actually use. And I remember, Amy, on the second day, I was walking along and I hike with a question. So that question that day was, um, can I live comfortably without this? And I hiked with that question for 13 miles. What
Yeah.
are all the things I could live comfortably without? What are all the things I couldn't live comfortably without? And it
Yeah.
really brought an interesting perspective when I came back home and to talk to Maria about simplifying. Like, can
Mhm.
I simplify my life as much as I try and simplify this business, right?
Yeah.
So that is my take on how my Camino experience boosted confidence and curiosity. And I will say, and I'll talk about this a little bit more, I wasn't sure I could walk 100 miles, y'all. That's a
Yeah.
long way. Like, even if you train, but it's the compound day after day. And at the end, I was like, holy shit, I just walked 100 miles through the rain, sick as a dog, like drenching wet. And yet I made it to the end. And how did I do that? Every day I got up and I put one foot in front of the other.
Yeah.
That's it. That's what I did until I reached the end of the earth called Finisterre. And
Hmm.
so, Amy, how about you? How did your recent European adventure boost confidence, curiosity, any of these things that we're talking about here?
Well, so taking the trains was something new. And what I didn't understand, because in America we have Amtrak and like that is it. Maybe a regional like commuter train. And so I didn't know exactly what I had bought when I bought the tickets. And I had been asking, I'm in a travel group online. I'd been asking my friend that lives in London. We had other friends who had just traveled to Salzburg this summer. And I was like, how did you get around? What train did you take? And so I was very nervous about the train situation and whether or not we were going to get from point A to point B. And so the first train from Munich to Salzburg, it started there. The conductor was outside, like waiting for people to come on. We had casual time. And so I learned about the reservation system, and we didn't have a seat reservation. So, what seat to look for. And I was like, all right, I feel really good about this. I feel good enough that I'm like, I could actually give someone advice if they were taking a train right now in Europe on at least how to find your seat. So I celebrated that. And, I saw other people sitting in the wrong seats and they were very confused on why the conductor told them to get up and they weren't quite for sure. So I was able to explain and kind of show them and bring them some calm and some confidence too. So when we go from Salzburg to Munich or Salzburg to Zurich, this train ride is not as smooth and it's very fast. It's very terrifying. I don't even know where the track is that I'm supposed to go to. So this train rolls in. We have minutes to get on. There's a ton of people getting off, a ton of people getting on, people with babies, people with kids. It's just my husband and I. Like, I can't lose this man. He's tall. He also carries my suitcase. So I don't have that many concerns. But then all of a sudden we see all these families who are trying to get their kids on. So we get our stuff on, we help them get their stuff on. And then we realize, wait, the train had like two numbers on the side of the car. Are we all going to the right place? Because this one lady was going to somewhere completely different. And I was like, oh gosh, my confidence level just sank. Did I put a bunch of people with babies on the wrong train car? Am I on the wrong train car? And so I just kind of let it sit. Finally, the computer system caught up and we realized we're on the right train. And the train is actually splitting in half at a train station. Half of the train is going to another place. We are continuing on to Zurich. We weren't confident though that we were on the right train until I went and I tried to talk to the food guy. He's like, if you're talking to me, you're on the right train. But I was like, how does he know this? So I walked to the end of the train and found, oh, there's like a wall clearly where it's going to split. And some of you listening to this are probably laughing, like, come on, Amy, how naive are you? But again, these are the things we don't know when we don't do these things. And so I was able to like go back confidently to the lady that we helped with the baby and say, you are okay. We don't need to pack your stuff up. We're okay. We are all going to get to Zurich together. And so I think not only the confidence in myself that I can bring, but the confidence that I was able to bring in other travelers and other passengers is something that I just love to be able to do. Where my husband's like, why are you talking to these people? We don't know them. We don't need to help them. And he definitely will help people with babies and stuff. But, I went out of my way to make sure that they felt as comfortable as I did and as confident as I did that we were going on the right track, literally.
I love that. I ended up taking a train back from the end of the earth back to Madrid, where I had to get
Yeah,
the plane. And I was just telling Maria last night, I love the trains in Europe. They're so easy to navigate. They're so connected. You can go anywhere at
they're
any
very
time that
efficient.
you want to go.
Yeah.
And I'm like, Amtrak sucks.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
just
I mean, don't get me wrong. I do love Amtrak and I do love taking a train. And I've taken the train on both coasts on the Amtrak, but I do feel like you can just go everywhere on a train in Europe where I wouldn't go everywhere on a train in the States. So, yeah,
all right,
very.
everyone, you're used to episodes that end in about 30 minutes. Clearly, that's not going to be this episode. We got a lot to share with you. So hang with us. Here's point number 2 of why we think travel helps business owners grow. So travel strengthens and broadens your global perspective. All right. This is all about cultural awareness, building global perspective of what goes on outside of like our 4 walls in our state or in our country, or in our continent even, right? And one of the things that I want to share about being a pilgrim is there were already, let's see, we're in September, or October, we're ending the pilgrimage season for the most part. They had welcomed 500,000 pilgrims to the trail this year. And that
Wow.
was just the amount they could count. And if you're curious how they count is you get what's called a credential at the end of you have to walk 100 continuous kilometers and get 2 stamps a day in your credential passport, not your
Mhm.
regular passport, but the Camino passport. And then when you get to Santiago, you go and you stand in line and you turn it in, and they make sure that you were actually walking and in these places and can prove that you were on the move for 100 kilometers. So they've only been able to count the people who have gone into that particular place to get their credentials. But I think what's really important that I didn't realize is some people have walked the Camino like 9 times, 12 times, 13 times. They're not standing in the place, right? And we even had people on
Oh, okay.
our group of 13 women owning business. Um, 2 of ours didn't get their credentials because they didn't want to walk all of that. They chose that
Mhm.
walking just wasn't for them, which was fine. Like everyone has their own way, the way or the path on the Camino. So what I thought was fascinating is I don't talk about politics
Mhm.
hardly ever. It's not my joy. Um, having a transgender spouse, there's a lot of like anxiety and stuff going on with this election coming up. But here's what I can tell you. The number of, I'll say foreigners, but I was a foreigner, right? So
Right.
the number of people from various countries
Yeah.
who in the cafes or on the trail would say to me, I hope you're voting for Harris. Our country is depending on it.
Intriguing.
And I did not engage much more than that. I
Hmm.
said, yeah, it's like kind of crazy. I'm so glad to be out of the United States for 15 days during election
Yes.
season. Like that was a good move. Um, and yes, I'm going to do my part. And I kind of left it at that. But what it really showed me is the whole world is invested in our election.
Yeah.
Right? They're living this crazy news and crazy things, all these crazy things that we're seeing here in the US. And they're literally asking me as an American, what is wrong with half of your country? And I just have to say, I'm going to do my part because I'm not engaging in it, right? I'm not like, that's not my joy. It's not my place. But that was probably one of the biggest things that I learned this trip about global perspective was how much the election and the outcome of the election is not only playing on the minds of the people of the US, regardless of who you're voting for, but it's also on the minds of the world at large.
Yeah. And it's kind of funny that you have chose this topic because I have too, and we never talk politics. And what I was most surprised by when we were in Munich, on Monday, a lot more of the local people, a lot more of the residents were there. They apparently were there Saturday and then they come back on Monday. And we were standing there talking to this couple. She spoke no English at all. He spoke pretty decent English. And the other couple I was personally traveling with no longer live in the States. They live in London. And so anytime anybody would ask about the election or any of the situation, they just kind of pawned it off on us because they're like, well, we don't live in the States anymore. And so as the only representative of the United States in my travel group this time, which is not normal, I got to say that we get to listen with open hearts and make sure that we hear others' perspectives. And when I said that to the man from Munich, he was like, huh, I don't think he was ready for me to have that take on it. I think he was ready for me to stand for one party or the other.
Mhm.
And I was just like, gosh, like why was this guy giving me this feeling that he wanted me to take a stance? So we didn't have any English speaking channels in any of the places we traveled besides the news stations. And it dawned on me about halfway through the trip, the reason why that man thought I would take a stance is because that's all he is seeing.
Yeah.
He's seen very dividedness. He's seen people take stances, whether they're factual stances or not factual stances. And I am kind of hoping that I surprised him a little bit. And it really got me thinking of, wow, like now I understand more and more and more, like people who only watch a certain channel or don't venture out and be curious and ask questions and get to know the other side. No wonder they are so strongly standed with the side that they're with. Whether it's right or wrong, I'm not here to argue that. But it did make me appreciate that again, I'm going back to number one. I always approach it with curiosity and question
Yeah.
and kindness. And I think that was one thing that I didn't see a lot on those news stations. There was not a lot of kindness happening.
Well, welcome to news. How's it sell? Drama. Drama.
Yeah.
Like a lot of ads, y'all trying to run.
Yeah.
Drama.
So it was interesting that we both kind of had a different perspective, but it's all around the politics right now, which is not something that we tend to really go down and really isn't either our forte. So I think that also helps us expand and grow as humans. How can we have these conversations, even though it's not a conversation that we typically would have? So I
Yeah.
like that we both did that.
Yeah. All right. Point number 3, how travel helps us grow as humans, business owners, CEOs, and founders. I believe travel is a lesson in empathy and relatability. Now, one of the reasons I have traveled since a very young age, I was not raised in a family that traveled, y'all. So I learned and like cultivated this love of travel once I could get out on my own and experience the world and perspectives and be curious, all these things we've talked about. One of the things of this particular trip on the Camino, the empathy was high. Now, why would empathy be so high? Well, we're all walking in the rain. We're all hoping we don't have blisters, but if we do have blisters, we're stopping to tend to each other. I get sick. I don't have pharmacy near me. I ask people along the way, do you have cough drops? Do you have, so I'd also say this was a lesson in not only empathy and relatability, but being vulnerable and like asking for what I needed along the way and other people doing the same. And the beautiful thing I think about the Camino is it gave me a lot of empathy for myself, right? I chose to spend probably 5 or 6 hours or more a day walking in silence because I love no input. My brain loves no input, right? And I live in a world that has a lot of input. And being a CEO, I have a lot of input. People want things and I have ideas and all the things, right? So growing the empathy for myself, growing empathy for other people,
Mhm.
growing empathy for people in situations that I'm not in, but I know it's not ideal for what they're going through,
Right.
right? I remember stopping. There was this lady and she was sitting on a rock in the pouring rain, and she had like both her shoes off and she was trying to get dry socks and the wind was like flipping her umbrella inside out. And I just stopped and I said, "Would you like some help?" And she said, "I have to get socks, but I have to find my bandages. Like my blisters are so bad that I can't go on until I get dry." And I said, "All
Mhm.
right, well, let's figure this out." Right. So, relatability, that human experience, one of the things Amy and I are so aligned on in this brand is that you will determine, discover, and explore people's humanness when you're in conversation with them. That
Hmm.
is where the marketing happens. That's where the sales happen, right? So that was my lesson on empathy and relatability.
So then I think I'm going to go back to the train and the lady that we helped get on with her baby. I realized when I went running back in front of said train to figure out, are we in the right section of the train to go to Zurich and not be separated to Budapest? I don't even know if that was the right word, but maybe it is. And I realized there's an entire car for children. They have play toys, they have bigger seats so you can lay down with the baby. Like there's an entire car for kids. So I go back to my car with the lady who we helped with the baby, and the baby was so cute and such a good baby. But I was like starting to judge. Why did this lady not go to the kid car? Like, why is she in the car with the rest of us? I'm really kind of confused. Like, why wouldn't you? And then as I was kind of watching her and things were falling off the table, so we were helping pick them up and whatever. I really realized this baby, I don't think sleeps well. This mom just needed quiet. And if she could get her baby to be quiet, she was in a much quieter car hanging out with Josh and I than she was in the kid car. And, I said something to Josh about it. And I was like, I think she came here because she just needs quiet. And he's like, well, we're not very loud people, so I guess that's good. And I was like, well, we can be very loud people, but we're not on the train. And so I really, just kind of felt for it a little bit more. And whether or not that is her reason of being in the normal car with us and not the kid car, it was interesting on how quickly I went to maybe judge her, quote unquote, judge her for not going to where maybe she should have been going in my mind and my expectations. And so I think when we practice changing our expectations on people, that helps us be more empathetic. And that just reminded me. And we had a great time with her. We helped her get her kid out of the train once they were done. And she was, she didn't speak a ton of English, but we could at least communicate, and she was appreciative. And I hope like her and the baby, whatever they were doing, had a great time in Zurich, whether that was home or not. And it really just showed me that our expectations sometimes take us out of being empathetic for people. And again, if we can lead with kindness, that's always going to be key.
Yeah. And I'd also say our expectations of people or travel or how we think things should go keep us out of being present,
So true.
right, with what's happening around us. Which brings us to the next point, which is point number 4. Travel helps us become more adaptable.
Yes.
Um, we've all been, I'm sure, on a flight that got delayed, diverted, like
Yes.
you missed your connection flight, your bag didn't show up, right? What do we do as business owners? Is we adapt. What do we do as humans? We should be adapting. This is a really good skill to have, especially if you're a business owner and a visionary business owner who really wants to, uh, we've got to adapt in order to grow at the end of the day. That's it. Um, so in this particular case, did I ever want to get sick and hike the Camino? Hell no. Like, it's like the worst, right? But I adapted. I took one day off when I just couldn't do it. The rest of the time I walked it. Did I want to hike almost the entire Camino in the rain? Hell no. I was praying for like sun and warmth the whole time. And what we got was rain and wind and blowing ponchos and inside out umbrellas, right? Wet feet. It was hard to eat how I wanted to eat.
Yeah.
I don't know why, Amy. Like, I'm going to the fresh markets and I see all the fruits and vegetables, but you get to where you're going to eat lunch and there are no
Mm.
vegetables. Like,
Yeah.
there are no vegetables. Potato, chicken, potato, veal, potato, potato, potato. And I finally said to
Mhm.
the lady who was driving me out to Finisterre for my last couple days, I said, "Do y'all eat vegetables?" And she said, "We have one thing called, it's kind of like spinach."
Okay.
I'm like, "Was that the stuff that was in the Galatian soup?" And she's like, "Yeah." And I'm like, "What about the rest of the time?" And she's like, "We don't really do vegetables here."
Yeah.
And so when you're used to a high vegetable diet
Right.
and a high plant-based diet, you learn to adapt, right? Because you're either going to adapt or you're going to go hungry. And I was already sick and wet, so I wasn't willing to add hungry to the list.
No.
So I had to eat things I wouldn't normally eat. And I love the people of Spain, but man, y'all got to lay off the tuna. There was tuna on every salad, raw tuna, fried tuna, boiled tuna, broiled tuna. I finally asked the lady, "Can you please bring me a salad with no tuna?" And she looked at me like I was nuts.
Yeah.
But
Hmm.
the point is travel helps us become more adaptable if we're willing to do it. And to grow a business, you need to be adaptable. You have to
Yeah.
know what's going on around you. So, Amy, how did you have to adapt?
Well, I think rolling into Oktoberfest, we knew we needed to show up at this one tent at 4:30 to get our table, but we weren't quite for sure anything else. And so we're going in with a crowd. I feel like we're being like moved like cattle through the little like gates and stuff like that. And again, everybody's very nice, but also to Shannon's, like there's a lot of stuff that I can't eat. I can't drink beer. And so everybody's like, why are you going to Munich when one, you can't eat any of the food? I can't do potatoes. I can't do bread. I can't do a lot of sausages or schnitzels or whatever they are. And I don't drink beer. And I was like, I'm going for the people experience. Like, this is going to be so much fun. And so it was the adaptability of myself to just know that, hey, I wasn't going to be able to have that big thing of beer, but also I'm going to honor the adaptability of the people I travel with. Because after we went and experienced our first big tent, I was like, I'm starving and I really would like love a glass of wine. Can we find a tent that they also do wine in? And it was a much different experience than the traditional Oktoberfest experience. We had a sit down table, we ate together. It was super fun. There was others from the US, from the Pennsylvania area next to us. So we were just kind of talking with them a little bit. And so it was asking for maybe my friends to be a little more adaptable to making sure that I enjoyed myself as well. And I think that's key, but also we have such a great relationship that I know that they're not going to be mad at me if we're not hanging out in the big tent the whole time. And I think they're game for some of the unique experiences that I have to drag them through because of what I can and can't eat. So I just think making sure that if things need to be adaptable, you can always ask for what you need to. Just like you asking
Absolutely.
for no tuna on that salad.
It still tasted like tuna. I think they just took the tuna off
They
of
just
the
took the
salad,
tuna off and brought it back out to you.
but it's okay. And it was
Well,
less tuna than I wanted to deal with, but hey.
so I'm excited about number 5, Shannon, because again, I'm getting the download live in person here from you. Travel increases our self-awareness. What is the biggest, because I know there was a ton of awarenesses that maybe you had, but what was the biggest self-awareness for you on this trip?
Well, I think when I really think through it, um, I mean, when you walk 100 miles in a lot of solitude,
Mhm.
you have time to think, not think, meditate, not meditate. Like, I didn't listen to an audiobook, a podcast, or nothing. I had nothing. I did it on purpose, right? I don't listen to those things anyway because they hurt my ears if I have to wear headphones. So, um, one of the questions I went in, and I have a practice of hiking or walking with a question, was how can I arrange this business, this next iteration of the business operations more in line with the seasons, fall, spring, summer, and winter. And we have a team meeting this week where I'll be sharing with the team, and we're also going to be all going to Puerto Rico together where we're going to be doing some of this planning. But I've always thought, like, if I could figure out how to market and how to sell and how things would be structured around the natural rhythms and the seasons of nature, gosh, that would be amazing because y'all, nature is freaking smart. She got shit figured out. She can bring a hurricane and then regenerate, the area. Like, I'm not making light of these things, but this has been my question for about 10 years as a business owner. And it was really interesting, Amy. The very first place we stayed was in a convent, and it was in Leon. And on the wall was a little man picking grape leaves, and in Latin, it said September. And it was one tile. And I was like, wow, now I was in Leon in September. And so I'm in there and I'm looking around and I'm like, I bet I'm going to have fields of grapes, which I did. And I helped myself too, I will say, as we walked through the field. But anyway, I went to the front desk and I said, because I know the question is, how do I get my business aligned with this like farming calendar type thing? And I went to the front desk and I said, what is this man? He's like all over the place. May is over there and April's over there. And she's like, oh, the person who did this farming calendar for Spain in the 12th century, the museum attached to us has all the original artworks, and you can go see them all and see the whole progression of it. And I said, okay. So I went there the next day, and that really like planted the seed for the next 14 days of walking of this is possible to do. It's going to take some time and it's going to take some tweaks, but I am realigning this business to go with the seasons because we all have natural rhythms and natural seasons. So that was probably one of my biggest awarenesses from the business side. I'd say from the personal side, I can do any damn thing I put my mind to. I don't care. If I got to walk 100 miles in the pouring freaking rain where the cows are even looking for shelter and like I'm sick as a dog, I can do whatever it is that I say I'm going to do.
I love it.
It might look different. I might have to adapt, but I can do it.
Right.
How about you?
So I would say, since I did plan this trip at the same time Shannon was hiking the Camino and I wanted her to honor her commitment to herself of not working, I made the commitment to our clients that I would touch in at the beginning of every day. And it really made me aware of when I came back, how I still felt rested, but not as rested as I normally do, because normally I do disconnect the whole time. And again, we can't always do things exactly how we want them to be. It would have been great if Shannon's hike was a different week than the opening weekend of Oktoberfest and that I got this invite in 2025 instead of 2024. Yes, but it didn't. And so it did make me aware that I've got to make sure that I do take time. And so we're coming up on a long weekend this weekend. I'm going to take time this weekend to completely disconnect from the clients and completely disconnect from the business because I know I need to do that because normally I would do that on vacation. So it reassured that my practice of disconnecting is a good practice to be in. But also, I figured out a good way to stay in contact with our clients, to help them and support them that wasn't draining on our time and making sure that, my husband is off. He can't take his work with them. And so making sure that he still enjoyed his time and we were able to do everything that we wanted to do. So I think it just made it reassuring that our practice of when we're gone is a good practice to have. And I think is really important for everyone who owns a business, because if you don't get that break from your business for your mind to be quiet, then I don't know that new things and better things can really come into it because it's so busy all the time.
Absolutely. And one of the questions we get asked a lot is, because Amy and I both value travel so much, how do we coordinate traveling so that clients aren't left high and dry? And that's probably a whole nother episode for a different season.
Yes.
But I will tell you, Amy and I will be sitting down in the next couple of weeks and looking at what do we have on the horizon for 2025 and 2026, so we can really try and have one of us here that's on and one of us here that's off, because y'all, there's a better way to take time off than working your business.
Way better way.
All right.
Way better.
I've never been a digital nomad and I don't want to be one. Like, seriously, when I go, I want to go. And Amy, I turned off all notifications. Like, I
I know
was
you
so
did.
far gone of like what was going on. And I came back yesterday and I was like, oh my God, I feel so lost. I'm like, just breathe. Just breathe. Everyone's going to get you caught up. It's going to be fine. So
Yeah.
we call this
Well, and I think the good thing too is you take a couple days to reintroduce yourself and you're not diving straight into
no,
client sessions, right?
absolutely
That's
not.
happening tomorrow and the next day. So I
Yeah.
think giving yourself time to get caught up with the team is one of the best things that you can do. And so having that buffer even when you come back, and the time zone change, I think is really important to have that buffer. So
Yeah.
it makes
Yeah.
sense. It makes sense. Well, so we're going to move on. This is one of our longest episodes, so we can write that in the record books. Next episode, we promise will be a little bit more shorter, but we dove deep today. So thank you for hanging out with us. We are going to dive into behind the scenes of our immersive story experience in Miami called Content Creation on Location. So we still have stick tickets available. So if you'd like to grab yours before they're gone, make sure you check out the event lineup at joyfulbusinessrevolution.com/story immersion. So we'll see you on our next episode. All right. Bye-bye.
Adios.